We are Marc, Amy, Juliette and Clement from the medieval Chateau de Rosieres. This Christmas we've made you a very special advent calendar. Every day from the 1st to the 25th of December we will open the door to a different room in the chateau and introduce you to its past, present and future. Merry Christmas.
Hello everybody. Today we are going to show you a room at the top floor, which is the only room we know has been lived in the 20th century.
On the top floor, not in
On
the
the
entire
top
chateau. And how do we know that, Marc?
We know that because it's the only one on the top floor that has recent wallpaper. Recent is Art Nouveau, which is early 20th century. And it's the only one that has paint on the walls, the ceiling, the cupboard. And yeah, basically that's it.
And we also know something about we know that there was a maid living up here, don't we?
Yeah, well, we don't know exactly where she was living, but it's a couple of years ago when we opened for the National Heritage Days, somebody came to us saying that his grandmother had worked here in 1915 as a maid, and her name was Madeleine Bergeron. Which is a very local name, and it's quite likely that, well, the dates coincide with the style of the bedroom, the fact that this would have been probably a servant's room.
But I thought the previous owners also remembered that there was a maid living in here. I'm sure Catherine said something about that.
I don't know about that.
No. We get told a lot of things and we forget them.
What we know for sure is that this wallpaper is a beautiful Art Nouveau wallpaper from the turn of the 20th century.
And you wouldn't have done up a room if you weren't using it. So, you know, we know that this was intended at least to be used in the early 20th century.
It's a room that could be heated as well because it has a fireplace.
Oh yes.
And so yeah, it was probably the only room that could be heated on the second floor.
Yeah. We
love all the features about this room. It's really beautiful, and all the work it needs is just a little refreshing. The ceiling is a beautiful, beautiful plafond à la française, French ceiling. I explained this on a visit of the monk's bedroom. It's a ceiling with a lot of little beams that are hardly spaced. We have some evidence that the chateau was 2 stories higher until the 18th century. And this French ceiling on the second floor strongly indicates that it was actually the case, because there was it's a costly ceiling that you wouldn't have on the top floor in servants' quarters. So it was a floor that was obviously lived in at the time and that wasn't meant to be an attic.
These days we use this room kind of as a crafting room, but maybe not a crafting room as you might think. It's the place where we do work on paintings, photographs, frames, mirrors, things that we buy from auctions or brocants that need repairing. We bring them straight up here, so there are piles and piles of old paintings and pictures and things which we got as a bargain because they weren't in great condition, and then gradually Marc starts to restore them. And he's very good at reframing things, at fixing things, at cleaning paintings, obviously not big valuable paintings and ones that require a lot of skill, like the painting we did in the Grand Salon. But for little repairs, this is where we do it. And I think Marc likes to escape up here away from everybody and be nice and quiet at the top of the chateau. And he also has his bookbinding equipment up here.
this is a little painting we got from a brocante, and we had to do a bit of work on it. And now I just need to paste it back to the back of its frame. But I want to preserve all the old papers that were used on the first place, because they had obviously reused scrap paper to hold the painting to the frame.
Can you read any of that?
It looks like some military paper. It had like it's about the inspection of an infantry regiment for the king. So it's before
before the king lost his head.
Before the 18th century. And actually this is a really sweet little painting we found. It's I'm not sure exactly when it was painted. It could be as early as 17th century. It could be 19th century. I'm not quite sure. It's possible, if it's 19th century, that they just used all the scrap paper when they framed it. But it could equally have been earlier and have been framed at the time. This is a box of empty frames we bought as a lot at an auction. They're in various conditions, but it means we have spare frames to use if we find nice paintings we want that need framing. It gives a good base to work with. There's a mark in the wall here, horizontal, going all the way across. Where we don't know exactly what it is, but it's quite likely that it was the head of the bed, because it's the most sensible place in the bedroom to place a bed.
Which would kind of suggest that it was used for a long time up here, because that's a big old indent, isn't it?
Yeah, really big. The door itself is probably older than the bedroom. It also has these beautiful moustache hinges that I showed when we did the visit of the Grand Salon. So these are probably before the 18th century. And the door also has some really nice, a really nice wrought iron latch, and a lot of really nice little details.
I've just noticed actually also it's really greasy around the place where the hands would have opened the door and closed it. And that again indicates that if it was decorated in the early 20th century, it was used a lot after that, wasn't it?
Or it was used a little by somebody who had very dirty hands.
Now we come to what we're going to do with this room in the future. And that is the difficult part. I mean, I'm all for making it a spider farm because we've already made quite good progress with that so far. But Marc feels like we need to use it for the actual family. So there are a couple of options. My dream had always been to make this my office. Marc got his first choice of office, which we'll show you another day. And this was the room that really called to me to be my office, because the top floor is where we're going to have most of our living quarters. But since having children, I've realised that the rooms we were thinking of putting them into, which again we'll show you, are quite dark. And this is a beautiful, bright room. And since I actually love my children now, and rather than having theoretical children in the future, I kind of want them to have as much light and happiness as possible in their lives. And I feel like it might be a bit selfish of me to take this as an office. So I'm going to have to wrestle with my conscience for a bit and see how this works out.
It's also the place where we restore lightings for the chateau. And we bought, to begin with, a lot of them from brocantes. But it actually takes a lot of time to restore them, so we have a backlog of them. So we did in priority the nicest ones that we actually needed for the various places. and now we are left with the not so nice ones that we might or might not need one day, or send back to a brocante.
It's difficult,
or
isn't it?
charity.
Because they're so expensive when they're in good condition. So it's tempting to buy them when they're damaged because they're much cheaper. But there's a reason they're cheaper, isn't there?
Yeah, obviously. That's why I don't mind restoring some that are actually really nice, but I don't want to spend too much time restoring one that will never look good.
In choosing the artwork that we have around the chateau, we are very much people who go to brocantes and auctions and find what we like rather than what we need for a particular room or something. But we've also developed a knack of finding things that we can afford that are beautiful. And one of the things we found in recent years is that you can buy etchings much, much cheaper than actual paintings. But some of them are incredibly beautiful. And they're so dramatic, the black and white nature of them. Some of them are coloured, but most of them are black and white. Very historic. And representations of worlds that before they had photographs but were perhaps more accurate than some of the paintings. And we also love mountains, and we always seem to end up with mountain things. But I just absolutely love etchings. I'm not sure, Marc, do you like etchings as much as I like etchings?
I quite like etchings.
As much as me?
As much as you like etchings.
But you can get them for a snip compared to paintings, which always seem to be very, very expensive. So it's one of my favourite things to do. For this particular etching, one of the things that we need to do is restore the frame. Because if you look carefully, what looks like just a fairly bland grey frame is a gilt one underneath. Somebody has wonderfully decided to upcycle it by painting over the gilt with grey paint.
Silver.
It's not silver, it's grey.
It's authentic silver for
Is
me.
it authentic silver paint? It's such a travesty. It's such a beautiful frame. But we're going to have to painstakingly restore that.